If you think you know the truth about social media, you're wrong. My name is Sarah Michelle Carter, and I'm 38 years old, lead data scientist at a major social media company in California. 4 months ago, I died for 19 minutes during emergency surgery, and what Jesus showed me during those 19 minutes about social media will absolutely shock you. This isn't just another near-death experience story, this is a warning that could save your soul. But before we start, please let me know where you're listening from. It will be nice to feel closer, even if we're physically apart. Also, don't forget to like and comment on what you thought about this near-death experience testimony. Let's have a fair and open discussion so we can learn from each other on this channel. Enjoy listening. I wasn't always a believer. I designed the systems that predict what you want to see next, the notifications that pull you back in, the features that make these platforms so addictive. I thought I was helping people connect, and I had no idea I was building spiritual prisons. On March 15th, I was rushed to the hospital with severe internal bleeding from a ruptured appendix that had gone undiagnosed for days. By the time they got me into surgery, my body was shutting down from septic shock. The last thing I remember was the anesthesiologist saying, "We're losing her," before everything went black. But then I wasn't in my body anymore. I was floating above the operating table, watching the medical team frantically working on my lifeless form. I could see the monitors showing flat lines, could hear the chaos below, but I felt completely at peace. That's when everything changed, and I found myself being pulled into what I can only describe as pure light. That's where I met him. Jesus Christ was standing there, and he looked nothing like the pictures in Sunday school. This was pure power, pure love, pure truth radiating from a being so magnificent that my soul could barely comprehend it. When he spoke my name, it wasn't with a voice but with pure communication that went straight to my spirit. "Sarah," he said, "I have been waiting for you. There is much you need to see about the work you've been doing and the world you're returning to." What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about reality, technology, and the spiritual battle happening right under our noses. Jesus took my hand, and suddenly we were standing in what looked like a massive control room with millions of screens floating in the air. Each screen showed someone using a phone, tablet, or computer. But this wasn't just watching people scroll through social media. This was seeing the spiritual reality behind every swipe, every like, every share. "Look closer," Jesus said, and I could see what was really happening. Around each person using their device were these shadowy figures, whispering into their ears. These weren't physical beings but spiritual entities, and they were feeding people thoughts, emotions, and desires through the very platforms I had helped build. Every notification, every algorithm-driven recommendation, every endless scroll was being used by these dark forces to manipulate human consciousness. "You thought you were connecting people," Jesus said, reading my thoughts, "but you were actually isolating them from me and from each other." He showed me the spiritual anatomy of a social media feed. Each post was designed to trigger specific emotional responses: envy, anger, lust, pride, comparison. The algorithms I had perfected weren't just predicting what people wanted to see, they were actually reshaping their desires, creating artificial needs and feeding spiritual emptiness. "Watch what happens when someone opens their phone," Jesus instructed. I saw a teenage girl pick up her device. The moment the screen lit up, it was like watching spiritual chains wrap around her soul. With each scroll, each double tap, each story she viewed, the chains got tighter. She was looking for connection, for validation, for love, but instead she was being fed a steady diet of comparison and inadequacy. "She spends 4 hours every day searching for what I freely give," Jesus said. "But the voices from her screen have become louder than my voice in her heart." Then he showed me something that made me physically sick. I could see the dopamine hits that occurred with each like, each comment, each notification. These weren't just chemical reactions in the brain, they were spiritual counterfeit experiences designed to mimic the joy and fulfillment that comes from genuine connection with God and others. "The enemy cannot create," Jesus explained, "he can only corrupt what I have made. He has taken your need for love, acceptance, and community, and twisted it into something that actually destroys those very things." Jesus then revealed to me the true purpose behind social media algorithms. What I had thought were neutral mathematical formulas designed to show people relevant content were actually spiritual weapons being used in the battle for human souls. Do you remember the Tower of Babel? Jesus asked. I nodded, recalling the biblical story of humanity's attempt to build a tower to heaven. Your generation has built a new tower, not of brick and mortar, but of data and pixels. And just like that ancient tower, this one separates people from me and from each other. He showed me how social media had become a form of digital idolatry. People were literally worshipping their devices, offering them the first moments of their day and the last moments before sleep times that had once been reserved for prayer and reflection. They ask their phones questions they once asked me, Jesus said. They seek wisdom from algorithms instead of from my word. They look for meaning in likes and shares instead of in my love for them. The vision shifted, and Jesus showed me something even more disturbing. He revealed how these platforms were being used to fragment human consciousness itself. The constant stream of information, the rapid switching between different types of content, the endless scroll, all of this was literally rewiring human brains to be incapable of deep thought, contemplation, or genuine spiritual connection. I created humans to commune with me in stillness and quiet, Jesus said, referencing Psalm 46 verse 10, Be still, and know that I am God. But your technology has made stillness nearly impossible. How can they hear my still small voice when they never experience silence? He showed me children as young as 3 years old already addicted to screens, their developing brains being shaped by artificial stimulation instead of real-world exploration and human connection. I watched as their natural capacity for wonder, creativity, and spiritual sensitivity was systematically diminished by constant digital input. This generation is losing the ability to recognize my presence, Jesus said. They've been trained to expect immediate gratification, constant entertainment, and external validation. But I work in seasons, in silence, in the deep places of the heart that require patience and stillness to access. Jesus then showed me the spiritual mechanics of what happens during what people call doom scrolling, the compulsive consumption of negative news and social media content. With each piece of bad news, each tragic story, each anger-inducing post, people were literally absorbing darkness into their souls. Their spiritual light was being dimmed, their hope depleted, their capacity for joy diminished. They think they're staying informed, Jesus said, but they're actually participating in a form of spiritual self-harm. Fear and anxiety are tools of the enemy, and your platforms have become delivery systems for these spiritual poisons. But what Jesus showed me next was even more heartbreaking. He revealed how social media was destroying real human relationships. I watched families sitting at dinner tables, physically present but spiritually separated by their devices. I saw couples lying in bed together, both scrolling on their phones instead of connecting with each other. Love requires presence, Jesus said, but your technology teaches absence even in the midst of togetherness. He showed me how the addictive nature of social media was designed to pull people away from the present moment, the only place where genuine connection with God and others can occur. Every notification was an invitation to abandon the here and now in favor of a digital elsewhere. Do you remember my words about where your treasure is, your heart will be also? Jesus asked, referring to Matthew 6 verse 21. Look where people's attention goes throughout the day. That will show you what they truly treasure. I watched as people instinctively reached for their phones hundreds of times per day, often without even conscious awareness. Their attention, their very life force, was being constantly diverted away from the people and experiences right in front of them. Jesus then revealed something about social media that completely changed my understanding of addiction. He showed me that the platforms weren't just creating psychological dependence, they were creating spiritual dependence. People were literally using social media as a substitute for prayer, community, and divine connection. When someone feels lonely, instead of turning to me, they open an app, Jesus explained. When they need encouragement, instead of seeking my word, they look for likes and comments. When they're bored, instead of sitting with me in quiet reflection, they scroll through endless feeds of meaningless content. He showed me how this substitution was gradually emptying people's souls. They were filling themselves with digital junk food while starving spiritually. The result was an epidemic of depression, anxiety, and spiritual emptiness that no amount of online connection could heal. They are ever connecting but never truly connected, Jesus said, echoing Paul's words about those who are always learning but never able to come to a knowledge of the truth. 2 Timothy 3 verse 7. Then Jesus showed me something that made me understand the true scope of what was happening. He revealed how social media was being used to shape global consciousness, to influence elections, to promote division and hatred, and to spread lies at unprecedented speed and scale. The enemy has found a way into every home, every bedroom, every mind, Jesus said, and most people don't even realize they're being influenced. They think they're making their own choices, but their thoughts and emotions are being manipulated by forces they can't see. He showed me how algorithms were designed to promote outrage, division, and conflict because these emotions drove engagement. The more angry or upset people became, the more they used the platforms, generating more data and more advertising revenue. Hatred and division had literally become profitable. What was meant to connect has become a tool to divide, Jesus said. Instead of building bridges between people, these platforms are building walls. Jesus then showed me the spiritual significance of what we call influencer culture. He showed me how millions of people were literally worshipping other human beings, following their every word, copying their lifestyles, and measuring their own worth against carefully curated online personas. They have created new idols, Jesus said, not carved from wood or stone, but made of pixels and popularity. And just like the idols of old, these demand constant attention and sacrifice but give nothing of value in return. He showed me how this culture of digital worship was particularly damaging to young people, who were abandoning their own unique identities to become copies of whoever was trending. Their God-given creativity and individuality were being sacrificed on the altar of online conformity. I created each person to be unique, with special gifts and purposes, Jesus said, but your platforms encourage them to become identical copies of whatever is popular. Then Jesus showed me something about social media that connected to biblical prophecy in ways that made my soul tremble. He revealed how these platforms were creating the infrastructure for the kind of global monitoring and control described in Revelation. Look at what your technology has made possible, Jesus said, showing me how every click, every like, every search was being tracked and analyzed. Governments and corporations now know more about people than they know about themselves. This data can be used to predict behavior, influence decisions, and control populations. He showed me how social credit systems were already being implemented in some countries, where people's access to services, employment, and even travel was being determined by their online behavior and expressed opinions. Remember what was written about the end times, Jesus said, referencing Revelation 13 verse 17, that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark. While Jesus made it clear that we weren't yet at that point, he showed me how current technology was creating the possibility for such a system. Digital identity is becoming more important than spiritual identity, Jesus explained. People are more concerned about their online reputation than their standing before God. But then Jesus showed me something that gave me hope. He revealed that technology itself wasn't evil, it was how it was being used that created problems. He showed me examples of people using digital tools to spread the gospel, to build genuine community, to serve others, and to grow in their faith. The question isn't whether to use technology, Jesus said, but how to use it without being used by it. He showed me people who started their days with prayer before touching their phones, who used technology with intention rather than compulsion, who chose real-world connections over digital ones. These people were using social media as a tool rather than allowing it to become their master. Remember my words about being in the world but not of the world, Jesus said, referring to John 17 verses 14 to 16. My followers can use these tools without being consumed by them, but it requires wisdom, discipline, and constant awareness of the spiritual battle taking place. Jesus then showed me specific strategies for maintaining spiritual health in the digital age. He revealed the importance of what he called digital Sabbaths, regular times of disconnection from devices to reconnect with God, family, and creation. Just as I went into the wilderness to pray and fast, Jesus said, my children need wilderness time away from digital distractions. The soul requires silence to hear my voice. He showed me how communities could support each other in maintaining healthy boundaries with technology. I saw families having device-free meals where they practiced genuine presence with each other and with God. I saw churches creating sacred spaces where phones were left outside, allowing people to fully engage in worship without digital distraction. True revival will require unplugging from artificial connection to plug back into divine connection, Jesus said. Then Jesus revealed something about prayer that revolutionized my understanding. He showed me how constant digital stimulation was literally damaging people's ability to pray and meditate. The brain patterns required for deep spiritual connection were being overwritten by the rapid-fire neural patterns of digital consumption. Prayer requires a different kind of consciousness than your devices promote, Jesus explained. It requires patience, stillness, and the ability to focus on one thing deeply rather than many things shallowly. He showed me how people's prayer lives have been reduced to quick, superficial requests, treating God like a divine search engine rather than developing the deep, ongoing relationship He desires. They want immediate answers to every prayer, Jesus said, but I often work through processes that require time, trust, and transformation. The instant gratification of digital technology makes it harder for people to walk by faith and not by sight. Jesus then revealed something about worship that broke my heart. He showed me how many people were more excited about posting pictures of themselves at church than actually encountering God during worship. Their focus was on documenting the experience for social media rather than experiencing God's presence. They are performing Christianity rather than practicing it, Jesus said. Their worship is more about their online image than their relationship with me. He showed me how this performative spirituality was actually hindering genuine spiritual growth. People were more concerned about appearing spiritual than becoming spiritual, more focused on broadcasting their faith than deepening it. Remember my warning about those who do their good deeds to be seen by others, Jesus said, referencing Matthew 6 verse 1. Social media has made this temptation available to everyone, not just the religious leaders of my time. Then Jesus showed me something about the future that filled me with both concern and hope. He revealed how the next generation was being raised with a fundamentally different relationship to reality than any generation in human history. These children know more about virtual worlds than the physical world I created, Jesus said. They're more comfortable with avatars than with their own bodies, more skilled at digital relationships than face-to-face connection. He showed me teenagers who could navigate complex online games but couldn't maintain eye contact during real conversations, young people who had thousands of online friends but felt profoundly lonely and disconnected from others. They're losing the ability to be human in the way I designed humans to be, Jesus said. Connection through screens is not the same as communion of souls. But he also showed me young people who were recognizing these problems and choosing a different path. I saw teenagers deleting social media apps to focus on real relationships, young adults choosing careers based on calling rather than online popularity, children learning to find joy in creation rather than screens. Every generation faces unique temptations and challenges, Jesus said. This generation's test is whether they can use powerful tools without being enslaved by them. Jesus then revealed something about mental health that connected directly to social media use. He showed me how the constant comparison enabled by these platforms was creating an epidemic of depression, anxiety, and suicide, especially among young people. They compare their inner reality to others' curated presentations, Jesus said, and find themselves lacking. But they're comparing truth to lies, authentic struggles to filtered perfection. He showed me how social media was amplifying every human insecurity and weakness. People who might have struggled with comparison or envy in small ways were now exposed to constant triggers for these emotions on a global scale. The human psyche was not designed to compete with the entire world, Jesus said. I created people to find their identity in me, not in comparison to others. Then Jesus showed me something about sexuality and purity that made me understand why he was so concerned about social media's influence. He revealed how these platforms were systematically breaking down biblical standards of modesty, purity, and healthy sexuality. They have made the private public and the sacred common, Jesus said. What I designed to be intimate and protected is now displayed for approval and consumption. He showed me how the sexualization of social media was affecting people of all ages, teaching children adult concepts before they were developmentally ready, promoting behaviors that damaged their ability to form healthy, committed relationships later in life. They're learning to see themselves and others as objects to be consumed rather than souls to be loved, Jesus said. Jesus then showed me the truth that made me understand why he had brought me to this place. He showed me how social media had become a battlefield for truth itself, where lies could spread faster than facts, where emotions carried more weight than evidence. "Remember my words, I am the way, the truth, and the life," Jesus said, referencing John 14 verse 6. "But your platforms have made truth relative, subjective, and negotiable. When people can't agree on basic facts, how can they find their way to me?" He showed me how the fragmentation of truth was leading to a fragmentation of society itself. Without shared understanding of reality, people were becoming unable to communicate across differences, to find common ground, to work together for the common good. "Divided they fall," Jesus said, "and division is exactly what the enemy wants." But then Jesus showed me the most important thing of all. Despite everything that was happening, despite the spiritual warfare being waged through technology, despite the damage being done to human souls and relationships, His love remained constant and His power remained absolute. "None of this is outside my sovereignty," Jesus said. "I am still working all things together for good for those who love me and are called according to my purpose." Romans 8 verse 28. He showed me how He was using even the negative effects of social media to wake people up to their need for Him, to reveal the emptiness of digital connection compared to divine connection, to create hunger for authentic relationships and genuine meaning. "Sometimes people have to experience the counterfeit before they recognize the authentic," Jesus said. "The loneliness and depression caused by social media addiction is creating a generation that's desperate for real connection, and I am the ultimate connection they're seeking." Jesus then gave me a vision of hope. He showed me a future where people learn to use technology wisely, where digital tools served spiritual growth rather than hindering it, where online platforms became spaces for genuine ministry and authentic community. "This is not inevitable," Jesus said, "but it is possible. It will require my people to wake up, speak up, and live differently. They must become examples of what healthy relationships with technology look like." He showed me families who had learned to prioritize presence over productivity, churches that were teaching digital discipleship, young people who were choosing depth over breadth in their online interactions. "The solution isn't to abandon technology," Jesus said, "but to redeem it. To use it for its intended purpose, to truly connect rather than to merely appear connected." As my time with Jesus drew to a close, He gave me specific instructions about sharing what I had seen. "You must tell them," He said, "not to condemn but to awaken. Not to create fear but to inspire hope. Not to judge but to offer a better way." He showed me that my background in technology, combined with this spiritual revelation, was not coincidental. I had been prepared for this moment, equipped to speak to both the technical and spiritual dimensions of these issues. "You know how the systems work because you helped build them," Jesus said. "Now you can help people understand what they're really dealing with and how to respond." Jesus then gave me one final vision that would sustain me through whatever challenges lay ahead. He showed me the ultimate future, when all technology would be redeemed, when every tool would serve its proper purpose, when human connection and divine communion would be fully restored. "I am making all things new," Jesus said, referencing Revelation 21 verse 5, including the tools humanity creates. "But first, my people must learn to use them according to my design rather than the enemy's deception." The return to my body was sudden and jarring. I gasped awake in the ICU, surrounded by medical equipment and shocked doctors who had been preparing to call my time of death. The surgeon later told me that my recovery was medically inexplicable. The sepsis should have caused permanent organ damage, but every test came back normal. In the months since returning, I've left my job at the tech company and dedicated my life to sharing this message. I've watched as some people dismiss my experience, others are transformed by it, and many are somewhere in between, curious but uncertain, concerned but not yet ready to change. But I know what I saw. I know what Jesus showed me. And I know that everyone who hears this message has a choice to make. Will you continue using technology unconsciously, allowing it to shape your thoughts, emotions, and relationships without your awareness? Or will you take back control, using these tools intentionally while maintaining your primary connection to God and others? The battle for your soul is being fought on the screen you're looking at right now. The question is, which side will you choose?